And we are live, Senators.
Good morning. This is Senate Health and Welfare Committee, and it is February 17th. This morning, we're continuing some testimony, hearing from folks.
16th.
Today's 16th.
Yeah.
Didn't I say the 16th?
No, you said 17th.
I was looking forward to Friday. Okay, so it's February 16th with apologies to all the YouTube viewers. And we're going to be taking further testimony today on S56, which is our early childhood education bill. And then we're going to be meeting with our federal delegation representatives. There is a fast stop at 10:15 so we can get to the joint meeting with the House for elections. There we are. So before we begin, I'm going to have our committee go around the table and introduce themselves, and this will be for each of you who's here with us to testify on Zoom, and then for folks who are in the room. It's great. Senator Hardy, why don't you start?
Senator Bruce Hardy from the Addison District.
Senator Terry Williams from Rutland District.
Senator Ginny Lyons from Chittenden Southeast.
Senator Dave Weeks from Rutland District.
Senator Martine LaRocque-Ulick from the Chittenden Central District.
All right, terrific. So we're going to hear today from some parents and folks who use childcare. This is great. Let's start, Rachel, please.
Great. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Yes, absolutely. My pleasure.
So why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself for the record, and then we'll listen to your testimony. And my question for everyone who's testifying today is, please, if you could bring or send your testimony in writing to Alex. If we don't already have it, it would be terrific. And we have a record of what we've heard.
Great. Yes, I have already sent it.
Terrific.
Sorry, what was that?
Go right ahead.
Okay, great. So my name is Rachel Kalpala, and I live in Essex. My husband and I are both public servants. Phil is a middle school special educator, and I'm a vocational counselor with Higher Ability Vermont. We have a 20-month-old son, Connell. We consider ourselves exceptionally lucky because we found a childcare spot before I gave birth at a program we truly love that is conveniently located across the parking lot from my husband's school. And we can afford it, but just barely. We pay significantly more than the cost of our mortgage, and last year we paid about 16% of our gross income in childcare. This year, the center has raised their tuition by 10% so they can continue to pay their teachers a living wage and retain staff. I applaud this as the educators are really incredible, and there has been very little turnover since our son began there, which I know is not the case in so many childcare programs. However, it is difficult as our wages have not risen at this rate. This year, we will be paying more than $19,000 in childcare expenses. The cost is difficult to bear and makes it financially unfeasible for us to consider having another child. I wanted to speak to you today because the proposed changes to childcare financial assistance in S56 are wonderful and important and could help many families, but not ours or others like ours. Families who are middle income but make just over 450% of the federal poverty level. For context, our combined income last year was $113,000. S56 proposes to cap childcare financial assistance support at 450% of the federal poverty level, which for a family of three like ours is just under $112,000 for 2023. So we would be just barely over eligibility threshold and would be left paying full price for childcare. At the same time, the bill rightly proposes to model childcare rates on a cost of care model. When I read the RAND report, I was excited to see that the state would pay rates to childcare programs that will allow them to support their employees with higher wages and benefits. All early educators deserve this, and we've been supportive of our childcare program's efforts along these lines. However, the RAND report also states that childcare costs under this new system would increase to $31,000 for a 2-year-old in a medium-sized center like ours, which is $12,000 more than we pay now. Well, that is a good thing since childcare programs would be more sustainable and be able to provide professional compensation for their staff. The prospect of paying those rates without help from the state is terrifying. There's no way we could afford to pay that. Families like ours, middle income, working in roles that are important to the state's future, and just getting established in our careers would be left to make the kind of impossible choices that the bill is trying to solve for. We would suddenly be paying more than 30% of our income on childcare, and our income level also makes us ineligible for other state programs that provide financial support to families. The changes to the Child Care Financial Assistance Program that are proposed in S56 are positive and important to the future of the state, but my family and other families who are in a similar income bracket need to be included in that expansion so that we'll also be able to afford childcare in the coming years. Please consider expanding the Child Care Financial Assistance sections of S56 to include families higher than 450% of the federal poverty level and turn the benefit cliff that families like mine would face into more of a slope so that we receive some level of support with paying for care. I strongly believe that it's crucial that we as a state pay for children's education starting at birth, not just at age 5 as we do now, and that the cost needs to be shared by all, not just parents and early educators. S56 takes some very important steps towards that goal. Please make sure that it helps all families and doesn't unintentionally push families like mine out of the childcare system or out of the workforce entirely. Thank you so much for your time and your efforts to solve Vermont's childcare crisis.
Thank you, Rachel. That's a heavy load in terms of the financial expenditures you're facing. I do have one question. Do you have any benefits at all from your workplace or your husband for childcare?
We participate in the dependent care financial DCFSA. So we get a tax benefit. So take some $5,000 of pre-tax money towards that. But that's $5,000 out of the $19,000 that we pay per year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for being available to us, and good luck at Hireability. It's a neat program we're working with.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay. So Megan Duff is here. You're here.
Hi, I'm here.
That's
I
great.
had to come. Well, I could come. I'm not. Thank you for having me.
All right, so welcome.
Thank you. So
Introduce yourself for the record.
my name is Megan Duff. I'm born and raised in Vermont in South Pomfret. I live in Morrisville with my husband and my 3 children. I'll tell you a little bit about us. So I have 3 children. I have 6.5-year-old twins, and I have a new 3-year-old who just had a birthday last week. I've worked in the hospitality industry for 20 years. My husband works for a software company in Stowe. And we moved here 11 years ago from Colorado in hopes to be closer to our families, with the idea of having a family of our own, knowing that we might want some help from them, and also to be in a state that valued early childhood education and education like Vermont. Really, I just wanted to come back to my homeland. So our family has been connected with Apple Tree Learning Center in Stowe since the fall of 2016, when we put our 11-week-old twins in daycare part-time. June 2019, we got a little surprise, found out we were having a 3rd child, and we were thrilled instantly. But obviously, we also panicked because finding a childcare spot for 2 babies was unbelievable. We were lucky. Finding another spot, we didn't even know if we could do that. So instantly our minds went to like, are we going to be able to find this spot for this kid? And then it was kind of like, how are we going to do it? We're already like stretched, like listening to Rachel, and like, it's a lot. 1 child, $19,000 times 3. So we were a bit panicked. How were we going to make it work financially for us? Fortunately, Apple Tree has a great policy that if you're already an existing family, you do get a priority on the list, which I didn't realize was such a big deal. We already had 2 kids there. It is a big deal because there's 150 kids on the current Apple Tree waiting list right now. So that gives you perspective. We were feeling really fortunate. Lamoille County does not have, we have some great resources, but there aren't a lot of places and everybody's fighting for that spot. So we were lucky. We knew that we were going to get a spot for our child. So that kind of stress was off the table. So next we had to look at the financials, and I instantly got my Excel spreadsheet out and started doing my math on what was going to work best for us. Being able to find a spot like Apple Tree that was 5-star accredited, NACE accredited, and not only an incredibly caring and loving place, wonderful teachers that has great retention was one thing, but then being able to afford that was another. And we started to look at it, and at the time we were paying about, with 3 kids in full-time daycare, we were going to be looking at about 45% of our income, which is a lot, but it's not quite manageable. We were lucky. We both had good paying jobs. We both had good benefits, but it was still a huge undertaking. So we were very thrilled to realize that our children, who are summer babies, our twins, were about to turn 3, which was huge. I kind of didn't get it until it happens. And next thing you know, they're going to get funding from Act 166 as we were about to enter another child in. So instantly, that's $800 a month from October to June. Huge, $8,000. That made all of this feel like we could do it, we could do it. And the excitement came back, and some of the stress, I started to realize we were very lucky. They were going to be entering into the pre-K classroom in the fall of 2019. Therefore, the discount started. It was huge savings. The idea that we could stay at Apple Tree and our children could be in their familiar program, as well as benefit from the pre-K curriculum, and then have the funding was just incredible. Not to mention we were going to have another child there. So my entire family was going to be under one roof at a place that worked for us, at a place that was conveniently located next to my husband's office. We knew we were lucky and we were fortunate to have that kind of program and to have everybody be together under one roof. Apple Tree was truly the best option for our family. Because my twins are summer babies, that means that they're towards the cutoff date, which means that they're the younger ones in their class. My daughter is incredibly petite, not on the charts. So having the idea that they were going to be able to stay at a childcare center that was a facility created for kids ages 0 to 5, not just the classrooms, but the bathrooms, the sinks, the kitchen, the playground. That was huge. The thought of them being there and being in their comfortable place made us feel really good. My twins not only had access of that year of pre-K funding and then the additional year at Apple Tree, it was amazing for us. I feel so lucky talking to friends from other states, how fortunate we are. If they had to attend pre-K in a public school, I don't know how we would have figured all that out. On the way here, I was kind of going off my script and thinking about it a little bit more. One, we would have missed out on that age 3 funding, and they would have gone to their local elementary school or a place that could take both of them. The playgrounds are larger, the classrooms are bigger, everything is just the facilities. It kind of made me wonder what the impact on that would be like, not only for our children to transition a year earlier, but for the schools to have that kind of, to have that impact coming in. It wouldn't have made me feel good. Just again, to give you reference, my daughter is currently 6.5, about the size of a 3-year-old. She's very tiny. So I don't think that would have made me feel great as a parent that was our option. It's hard because I'm kind of speaking hypothetically because that wasn't the option at the time. We were really lucky. Again, we were at Apple Tree. But additionally, I was thinking about those impacts, and we would have had to figure out, at least I think with this bill, we would have had to figure out the after school aspect of it. What do we do with them after school? We're going to transition them a year earlier to a new school. And then what happens at 2:45? Where do they go? do they get on the bus? I wasn't even gonna let them get on a bus in kindergarten, and I didn't let them get on a bus in kindergarten. My daughter still needed a 5-point harness. I kind of just keep thinking about that kind of stuff and like what would have happened after school and what that would have looked like. And we would have had to pay for the after school. And then what happens during President's Day when Apple Tree's open and schools are not open, or MLK or the vacations? Apple Tree is open. Apple Tree is open and we are able to continue working. Same with the idea of summer camp. You know, summer camps are really meant for school-age children. So what would be the option for our kids if they were in a school setting a year earlier? You know, additionally, just figuring all that stuff out a year earlier than we already did would have been a challenge, I think, for us, and created some stress for our family for sure. It was hard enough doing all of that when 2 5-year-olds were entering kindergarten. But at that time, they were a little bit more mature, a little bit more ready for transition. I believe that the transition aspect of it would have been really challenging, specifically for one of my children who had a little bit of a harder time transitioning. So I don't know all the details of this bill. I do know that I do know the current program and how well it has worked for my family. I do know that the value of center-based childcare for ages 0 to 5 to be able to grow and develop for many years in one place is immeasurable. And I hope that you consider expanding this program and offering it even more, and offering more financial assistance. Like Rachel mentioned, we kind of fall under that, like we don't qualify, but 45% of my income is going to go to childcare, and that's insanity, truly. And so I hope that it gets to the levels beyond what is proposed, so that more families can access and more families can make the choice that works best for them. And the choice for us was certainly Apple Tree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, and I had a great visit at Apple Tree.
Oh, good.
Yeah, right before the pandemic. It's a neat place.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a really special place. We are very fortunate. I wish that everybody had a place like that.
So our committee is planning a field trip, and one of the field trip locations is up in Morrisville. So maybe we'll come back and stop at Apple Tree. That would be fun.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention, my mom is an educator, 38 years at Woodstock Elementary School in 1st grade. So my parents actually drive up from South Concord every single week to do 2 days a week. So my 45% was actually based on 3 days of daycare for my 3 children. So my parents take the other 2 days every week. Well, now my kids are in 1st grade, but the 3-year-old still gets them. So he's with Nana right now, but we have that kind of help, and we are still in our position. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Great. Questions? Thank you. This is great. Is it Kiona or Kiona Baez?
Morning, it's Kiona.
Kiona, thank you for being here. Why don't you introduce yourself for the record, and then we will listen to your testimony.
Absolutely. I'm Kiona Heath. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a parent in Charlotte, Vermont. I'm here with Ilea Gilligan, who's also on the Zoom, and she can introduce herself in a minute. And we're also supposed to be joined by Brittany Watson, who's on your agenda. The 3 of us are members of Let's Grow Kids BIPOC Advisory Committee that's been meeting for the past 7 months. But I heard from Brittany this morning, and she's been navigating some illness this week. So I was hoping to also read her testimony after Ilea's section of what we pulled together for you all this morning, if that's okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, of course. As an overview of how we came together and how we're coming to you this morning, as Vermont's child care campaign prepared to pass pretty transformative legislation this year in 2023, Let's Grow Kids policy team led work in partnership with many organizations, individuals, early educators, and policymakers to solidify the details of the policy asks that would make childcare affordable and equitable, accessible and sustainable in Vermont. To ensure that the final policy proposals were as strong as possible and met the needs of families of color in Vermont, Let's Grow Kids created an externally facilitated early childhood education racial equity advisory committee for BIPOC Vermonters and we provided advice and feedback to the Let's Grow Kids policy team over the last year on their agenda work. Since last June, 8 BIPOC parents, including myself, a few of whom are also early childhood educators and leaders, have come together to share their stories of childcare and early childhood education across Vermont, and to review and provide feedback to the core elements of LGK's policy proposals for this coming year. Today, there was supposed to be 3 members of this Racial Equity Advisory Committee, Ilea Gilligan, Brittany Watson, and myself. And I also serve as the group's facilitator since last summer. We're grateful for the time that you have made for us this morning, and we are going to share a brief summary of the themes that emerged from our group and how these findings connect directly to S56. The first theme we want to share is just that we believe that high quality early childhood education programs reflect the strengths and values of our communities and the uniqueness of Vermont. In a high quality early childhood system, BIPOC families will see their cultures, their food, their music, their storytelling reflected and celebrated in their early childhood education environments. In a high quality early childhood education system, children will have access to the natural world and a connection to the land that they are on in programs that value environmental sustainability and stewardship. And in a high quality education system, transparency and communication are key. BIPOC families want to be in ongoing conversation with their early childhood education programs and hear regularly about the resources dedicated to meeting their household's needs. It was a joy to be the facilitator of this group. It has been a joy to be the facilitator of this group, but I'm also coming to you as a parent of 2 young children in Chittenden County. We are full-time working parents in our household, and our youngest just started kindergarten this fall. So our family has spent a majority of the last 8 years fully immersed and dependent on our childcare and preschool programs. We were fortunate to receive a spot in our town's only childcare center and preschool when we started having kids, which currently has a very long wait list and which would be considered high quality by any metric: ample outdoor space and time, Reggio Emilia inspired play and learning and care, classes that encourage connection and community among families, and experienced and knowledgeable teachers, many of whom I consider family at this point. And though it was a stressor, we were also very fortunate to be able to absorb the steady and significant increase in tuition costs over the last 8 years, costs that were necessary for paying our teachers a close to livable wage and maintaining a high quality educational environment. I am certain that my kids were nurtured and supported and deeply cared for by many of the people in their early childhood program. And like most other BIPOC families, we encountered significant disconnect and erasure and bias along the way. At one point, a particularly harmful experience with a teacher pushed us to consider leaving our beloved preschool, but finding another local program of comparable quality and availability proved impossible. And I really did try over a very untenable couple of months to figure that out. So instead of being pushed out of our incredibly well-supported early childhood education community, we put a substantial amount of time and energy and asked for a substantial amount of time and energy from our school administrators to work through some very difficult conversations and to leverage the resources that we knew they had available to make sure the preschool was safe and welcoming for our son. The truth is that in order to sustain a responsive, high-quality education program with well-prepared educators, with accessible outdoor space, with socially and culturally minded approach to programming, and with the ability to work through the unique needs of all of the families in their communities, early childhood education programs need more money than can be expected from increased tuition costs. The components of S56 that support this vision are reflected in the proposed expansion of the Child Care Financial Assistance Program that our committee was welcome to review last year, especially the proposal that provides payment to early childhood education programs based on the cost of providing high quality care. With increased state investment, programs will be paid based on the rates that allow them to provide nutritious and culturally appropriate food and materials, to create and maintain outdoor space, to invest in technology and community building to support consistent communication with families, and to invest in the staff at programs that make all of this come to life. Please do ensure that the scope of the investment and the change is sufficient to provide early childhood education programs with necessary funding for our families in this way. And then I'll pass it to Ilea.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly. Welcome. And
Thank you.
welcome-
Thank you so much
welcome
for having
to your partner.
This is Penelope.
Oh, good morning.
First of all, thank you for having us. This is a really great opportunity. Hello. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the teachers, and how they're at the center of our experiences. My name is Ilea Gilligan. My pronouns are she, her. I am a parent and I've been an early childhood educator in Vermont for the past 10 years. I'm also currently at work, so there's two others that you might hear. So just to get started, high quality early childhood education system will have BIPOC teachers and leaders recruited, supported, and well compensated within the early childhood education workforce. We are most confident in, comfortable with, and excited about the care our children receive when we are confident, comfortable with, and excited about their specific teachers and care providers in our families' lives. Affordability affects families and teachers alike. The lack of affordable childcare, lack of affordable housing, and inadequate wages in Vermont make it impossible to pull the top tier BIPOC early childhood caregivers, educators, and leaders who are necessary for high quality childcare system in our children. Hang on one second. Okay, here we go. So high quality childcare is almost impossible to obtain in Vermont. And if a family is able to find a spot in childcare, the cost is almost always astronomical and therefore unattainable for parents, specifically BIPOC parents in Vermont. I've worked in the early childhood education system for the past 10 years. I began as an assistant teacher and worked my way up to an executive director. In December of 2021, I was working as an executive director at a preschool in Burlington when I had my daughter, Penelope. I know.
You're just fine. And this is a great way to hear testimony.
Great, thank you. The position as executive director was overwhelming as we, teachers and administrators alike, were overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. I was working over 55 hours a week before and during my pregnancy and refused to do so once I had my daughter, even though I was given a 50% tuition discount. In October of 2022, I left the early childhood education field because it was no longer sustainable for myself or my family. Then came the bigger issue. If I'm no longer employed at a preschool, how is my family supposed to afford childcare? When I said the cost of childcare was astronomical, I wasn't exaggerating. It costs approximately $16,000 per year for a child ages 6 weeks through 1 year. For comparison, when I attended college at Northern Vermont University, my tuition each year was $10,000. Even with my husband working full-time for the government and whichever position I had, we could not afford full-time or even part-time childcare. And many families are in the same position where they do not qualify for assistance, but still cannot afford to send their children to childcare. S56 proposes to expand CCFAP to make childcare affordable for families and it importantly creates a compensation scale to ensure that early childhood educators are well compensated and able to remain in the profession. This is important, and so is investing in the professional preparation programs for early childhood educators to create pathways for people to enter and advance in the field. We would like to see an additional focus on creating a diverse early childhood workforce so that our children are more likely to have early educators who understand our families' experiences and our children's unique needs.
Thank you. Listen, Kiona and Ilya, you each have given some very good testimony. Can we get that in writing? Can you send it to Alex? That'd be great.
We absolutely can. Yeah.
We particularly love the assistant testimony person.
Penelope joins us for our committee meetings as well, and it's lovely.
Bye.
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 Thank you. This is good. It really helps make childcare real. Did you want to ask a question?
I do have a question, actually.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, if, what unique aspects of BIPOC families might you be experiencing with early childcare? And if there are unique aspects, if the bill addresses those challenges?
Is it okay for me to actually jump in with the third section of our response? Because Brittany's component actually speaks exactly to your question.
Okay, oh, yeah, certainly. Wait, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Well,
That's good. This is a good segue.
yeah, it's perfect. I'm actually really grateful for that question. I'm glad I can share Brittany's words today and the final sort of things that we were hoping to talk to you all about. The last portion of our testimony here is about the fact that safe, affordable, and high quality childcare is necessary for our survival in this state. BIPOC families specifically need this resource to live here and to stay here. The experiences of bias and harm that folks have had have led to fear when sharing their unique needs of BIPOC families in Vermont. This was one of the most poignant things that I brought away from 6 months of talking to parents and educators, Black and Indigenous parents and educators across the state, is the feeling that we have to trust that the state wants us here and sees value in retaining the BIPOC community in Vermont, which is not always the case. Right? The affordability of quality childcare is intrinsically linked to the affordability of living in Vermont, right? And we consider housing costs and childcare costs as tapping into the same family resources, which BIPOC families across the state already experience additional barriers to being able to tap into affordable housing. And the lack of availability and the burden of early childhood education costs has multi-generational and community-wide impact for us. We rely on our extended families and other BIPOC community members, some of which are not in Vermont, for help with childcare, since they have shared a shared understanding and shared lived experiences. Universal approaches are not necessarily equitable approaches. And so I think that speaks directly to your question. BIPOC families face additional discrimination and barriers to living and raising children in Vermont. And we need funding specifically allocated to BIPOC families for childcare costs. We are in Vermont for a high quality of life in alignment with our values, but the truth is that many of us have considered leaving this state for someplace more financially or culturally sustainable. So here are Brittany's words. She wrote this down for us, and I'd love to share them with you. Brittany says, I found it difficult to find adequate childcare in Vermont. The process was overwhelming. I used the Bright Futures website per the advice of a local parent-child center, and I felt my heart sank when I went through the list of childcare options near me, clicking each option one by one to learn that there were no openings. I observed some centers had not updated their lists in months, and I followed up with the local parent-child center who informed me that I'd have to call each childcare center individually on the Bright Futures website to see if that was not up to date. And then I went back through the list, calling each facility, and confirmed that there were no openings for my baby. I was told I could put my child on a wait list with no clear idea of when a spot would become available. And I was frustrated with the failure of that system. In addition to this problem, I had already had some worries sending my infant baby to a daycare with people I didn't know, a staff, and other children that did not look like me or my child. Racism is a very real issue in Vermont. I've worked with children and families in a former job, and I remember having to pick up a child I worked with at a registered home daycare to bring that child to an appointment. When I arrived at the daycare, I immediately noted the Confederate flag on display at the front of the room. I took a picture and sent it to some of my trusted colleagues and family members because I was scared to enter the home and wanted to ensure that people knew my whereabouts if something happened. When I entered the home, there was an overwhelmingly unpleasant odor, multiple animals, and a seeming lack of space for the children. I remember questioning, how is this home a daycare? My observation of that home care made it imperative for me and for my child to attend a child care center. As no options were available for my baby, I began to have my family come from overseas to America to watch my baby on a rotating basis of 3 to 6 months at a time. I paid for each family member's flight and then compensated them for the time. I flew my family in and out from the nearest international airport, which is 2 hours away, using this arrangement for the first 2 years of my baby's life. I had no other option but to put my oldest child, who was preschool age, in a childcare center that was not my first or even second choice due to availability of spots in my desired childcare center. And when a spot did open and I moved my child to the desired childcare center, this allowed my youngest to be prioritized on a wait list, and they began attending within several months of my oldest. My child was the only child of color in that class and did not have any BIPOC teachers. I now have 2 nieces that are also in need of childcare, and I cannot step up to have them in my home solely because of the childcare costs and the availability of space. Affordable, high-quality, inclusive childcare is essential for BIPOC survival in Vermont. We must feel confident that our children are safe, that our families are safe, and that when they are out of our presence and in a setting where they belong. We appreciate the focus on creating affordability for families in S56. You can strengthen this bill by building on the proposed expansion of the child care financial assistance to include a set aside for BIPOC families. During the pandemic, and this is something we talked about a lot in our committee, the Office of Racial Equity worked with the state to provide BIPOC-specific vaccination and testing programs that were successful, messaging directly to BIPOC families and households about how to be safe and well during COVID. A similar approach could be embedded within the CCFAP expansion so that resources are available to reach BIPOC Vermonters and support us to access early childhood education programs. This should be in addition to the non-citizen child care assistance program, which we were really happy to see in this bill as well. Additionally, it is important to support a broad range of program types since different families and children will have different needs from what feels most safe and welcoming. We urge you to ensure that programs of all kinds, including home-based programs and centers, have the resources to be high quality and are able to thrive and serve all children throughout their early childhood years. S56 takes important steps to include all programs equally in CCFAP expansion so that they have access to the resources and professional development. That's all we have for you from our committee today, but additional questions would be fine.
Thank you. It's a lot. And thank Brittany for submitting that. And again, if you could each submit your the testimony in writing, then we'll have it on the record.
We'll be sure to do that.
Okay, terrific. Questions? So in terms of, Senator Weeks did ask the question, what specifically can happen to support BIPOC families? That you've reinforced the need for the CCFAP increase. Then you also mentioned having something set aside. So can you talk about what that means a little bit?
Sure. Without ever having discussed with our group about the structure of what a set aside could be, I do think that the example that we talked about quite a bit as far as targeting specific communication, organizing resources transparently in a way that is directly set apart for BIPOC families, something similar to what happened during the pandemic out of the Office of Racial Equity, to really speak directly to the experiences of BIPOC families, knowing that they're facing intersecting systemic barriers, right? So accessing a basic resource feels different if you already have other sort of systemic barriers to accessing resources in your community. I think direct, clear, and culturally specific communication to BIPOC families, as well as resources set aside for those families to tap into, understanding the connection between all of the other systemic barriers to living in Vermont and cultural barriers to living in Vermont, would be a really powerful thing for sustaining BIPOC community in the state.
Thank you. That's helpful. And as you're talking through that, I think of the work that the Winooski school system is doing, and also with the Robin's Nest program that's in Burlington, where they have a larger BIPOC population. But as you said, there might be 1 or 2 folks at a center. They still need that information. So trying to disseminate it further. I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
Still needing that information for sure, and then also accounting for the experience for folks who are not in areas where there's a larger BIPOC community. I think information and resources getting safely and transparently to families that are the only non-white family in their early childhood education program is like a particularly unique and difficult task. right?
Yeah.
Because then you're sort of trying to get information through early education community that doesn't have any other BIPOC families or educators or leaders to help sort of connect families to that information. Yeah.
You've opened up a huge area, but so we greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time this morning.
Questions, any other questions? No other questions at this time. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time and the work that you're doing. And please send your info in because that will help us a great deal.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. And we have Christina Goodwin. Wait. You're here.
I'm here.
Yeah. I said, so I had two Chris's on the.
Yeah.
So one of there, one.
Yeah, Brenda.
Christina, you are here.
I am here.
All right, terrific.
Good morning. I wanted to thank you for inviting me to testify on S56. My name is Christina Goodwin, and I have been an early childhood educator in the state for over 20 years. And I'm also the executive director of Pine Forest Children's Center in Burlington. As an early childhood educator and a parent of young children, I'm asking you to support this important bill as well as to hear insights and some feedback so that we can ensure this bill is framed in a way that truly supports families and early childhood educators in our state. As a nonprofit early childhood education program, Pine Forest strives to create a diverse learning community for all families where all children can learn and grow. We currently have 70 children enrolled from infants through preschoolers, so 6 weeks through up to 6 years old. We have a robust child and adult care food program, which also is a similar acronym to the Child Financial Assistance Program, but we have a full-time chef who prepares 3 meals on site to ensure that all children have access to healthy, nutritious meals, which has been essential during the pandemic when so many families were faced with food insecurity. The National Association for the Education of Young Children's audacious vision outlines that each and every child, beginning at birth, has the opportunity to benefit from high-quality early childhood education delivered by an effective, well-prepared, and well-compensated workforce. This is a vision that's hundreds of early childhood educators in the state embrace as a sightline for the future that we want to build for children, families, and early childhood educators. I also believe deeply that this is a shared goal we all have in this room today. When I read through Bill S56, I saw lots of fantastic opportunities and see it as a great starting point. It sets the ground floor, the foundation for a sustainable early childhood education ecosystem that provides support and scaffolds families of young children and the people who call this their profession. I can see areas of huge positive impacts and others that may have unintended negative consequences. In Vermont, we find ourselves in a very unique space compared to other states in this nation, where early childhood educators here are ready to redesign the system and are ready to partner with the state in order to do so. We've worked for years to reduce the fragmentation of our field and have agreed to call ourselves early childhood educators within the early childhood education field. And I hope that you all can begin to join us in using that terminology so that we can ensure that everyone in Vermont has a clear understanding of who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So there's aspects of this bill that would have major positive impacts on early childhood education. First are the pieces around CCFAP that would have a transformative effect on my program and support more families to access and afford early childhood education, which we have heard today is highly expensive. Presently, Pine Forest serves 64 families with 70 children, and 17% of those families access CCFAP funding, and all of them currently have no co-payment. This is a huge impact on families who are struggling to pay bills, find affordable housing, and access food resources. At present, there are many families who fall just slightly outside the eligibility requirements who are struggling. As proposed in the bill, if the federal poverty level is expanded in fiscal year 25 to 450%, 24 more families would be able to access CCFAP funding alongside this sliding scale. And for some, this would require a co-payment. However, yearly tuition for an infant or toddler at Pine Forest is $17,160 a year per child. For many families, this means they are paying more than 10% of their income on tuition and deferring other bills such as student loans to make ends meet. You're basically kicking the debt down the street. These proposed changes to the federal poverty level would mean that 50% of our current school population would be able to access financial supports in order to offset the cost of out-of-pocket tuition. By removing all work, education, and health eligibility requirements for families, so that eligibility for CCFAP is determined solely on income, it means that the increase would impact CCFA family, would increase the impact CCFAP could have on families with young children. To reiterate, these changes would have a huge impact on families' lives and quality of life, and so I thank you for even including that. To put in perspective, if S56 had happened 10 years ago, as a family of 4, this increased rate would have saved my husband and I thousands of dollars in tuition. In turn, we could have put more money toward paying off our student loan debt, paying down our mortgage, and contributing more to our local economy. Imagine the impact beyond 450% of the federal poverty line could have on Vermont families. Many of the families in our program are middle income and would likely fall, again, just over that proposed cap for CCFAP. With rates rising to reflect the actual cost of care across programs, they will see dramatically increased childcare rates and no state support to pay for them. And I'm not really sure how the families in our program are going to be able to afford that without help from CCFAP. In addition, if CCFAP were to shift to an enrollment model, as outlined in S56, the income we receive would be steady and predictable. Right now, it fluctuates every 2 weeks based on whether a child was homesick or stayed home just to spend a day with their parent. If CCFAP were to shift to a cost of care model rather than the market rate, also proposed in S56, that would mean that my board of directors and I could work together to project increases in compensation, as well as increased benefits for early childhood educators, instead of cobbling it together every year. Changes made to CCFAP during last year's legislative session helped to fill the gap for our program between what CCFAP was paying and the true cost of care, which increased our tuition income. These additional changes will provide stability for families as well as for our program. In addition, if the proposed CCFAP investments in S56, I'm grateful for the addition of the investment in our vital early childhood education workforce. We have a workforce shortage across many sectors in Vermont, but in early childhood education, that shortage means programs are often reducing enrollment, which we know already have long wait lists, closing classrooms from time to time, reducing operating hours, and struggling to hire qualified candidates. Our workforce shortages then impact other sectors as parents cannot return to the workforce or are forced to reduce their hours. In order to pay our early childhood educators compensation commensurate with their credentials, we would need to significantly increase tuition. Our school works closely with our families, and we know that they cannot afford to pay more. In order to rebuild our workforce, we need investments in compensation that are comparable to our pre-K through 12 counterparts in public schools. I appreciate that S56 requires programs receiving CCFAP funding to agree to provide compensation to early childhood educators in line with compensation standards, as this is the foundation for our field becoming well compensated. Funding for scholarships is having an impact on early childhood educators statewide, and this investment in the workforce benefits young children and their families. I'm happy to see this funding is continued into this bill. Our program has a teacher currently enrolled in the Teach Scholarship Program who is working towards her associate's degree. So we have a teacher working on an alternative path to licensure through AOE to obtain her teaching license in first through grade 3. And 2 recent college graduates in our program are accessing the student loan repayment program. And all these scholarships are saving these early childhood educators thousands of dollars that is not building up in debt. And in turn, their skills are being reinvested into the early childhood education system as a benefit to young children and families. When we build up our current workforce and put into place supports for the future workforce we know we need, we can ensure accountability and sustainability moving forward. In addition, retention bonuses have made an impact on our school community over the last 2 years. I know that funding has helped to support many of our early childhood educators through the stressful and unprecedented times we have faced. This bonus model has shown that investments into the field has led to retention of our current workforce and allowed programs to offer sign-on bonuses to new employees. This same model could be used to support a compensation and benefits model as the groundwork has been laid and provides a blueprint for moving forward. Thank you for continuing to provide early childhood educators in this bill. As you can tell, there's a lot in S56 that I believe would support Vermont's children, families, early childhood educators, and childcare programs of all types. This is incredibly exciting. However, I do have concerns about the proposed changes to universal preschool in the bill as introduced. Our current universal pre-K system utilizes a mixed delivery system in line with national best practice that gives families the choice of accessing high-quality pre-kindergarten setting that works best for them, which I think we heard loud and clear from some of the parents before. I outlined a lot more of that in the piece that I'm going to submit to Alex, so I'll let you read that for on the record, just because I don't want to take up too much time, as I know you heard a lot about it this week. I deeply feel that we as adults in this state are obligated to do what is just and right for all children in Vermont. So I'm hoping that we can partner together to make sure this bill has an impact immediately and builds a pathway for clear next steps. Again, this bill lays the floor, but does not set the ceiling for what early childhood education can be in this state. It is going to take some big changes, and I appreciate you as a committee for taking a look at the early childhood education system and its interconnectedness as mirrored to so many other business sectors and services for children and families. And I thank you for your work on behalf of Vermont's children and families, and I look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you. You've done a lot of thinking through the bill. Appreciate that. And it would be great to have it sent to Alex. Questions? Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we have Chris Nelson with us. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Chris Nelson, and I'm an early childhood educator and the owner of a registered family child care home in North Troy. I've operated my program for almost 30 years, and I've been a public pre-K partner for almost 10. I opened my child care business out of necessity. My husband and I had 4 children under 6 that needed child care, and at that time we did not qualify for CCFAP, and we could not find available child care for all of our children in one location. So when I began my business, I had no idea on how to do it correctly. I focused on professional development, reading current research into best practice, gaining understanding and application of quality measures, assessments, and developmentally appropriate programming. My business was the first star-rated program in Vermont's quality rating system, STARS, and that was around 2003. Currently, I'm working towards a master's in early childhood education. Over time, I've developed my own skills and expertise, and I've began to consult nationally as a mentor for homegrown childcare here in Vermont, offering technical assistance and support through Let's Grow Kids. My involvement with both these companies is to help program leaders and educators implement and identify areas of growth and quality measures to ensure that all their programs can offer the high quality childcare and education that families and children in Vermont deserve. I also offer professional development opportunities to early educators through Northern Lights at CCB. I'm a board member of Vermont AEYC, and I serve on a professional development specialist for the Council of Professional Recognition. But today I come before you as an early educator, a mother of 5, and a grandmother of 8. From each of these perspectives, I would like to sincerely thank you for putting a bill forward with a focus on childcare and for recognizing the need for bold change rather than small tweaks to the struggling childcare system. By introducing S56, you've crafted a transformational bill for all of Vermonters, and for that I am grateful. I've read the bill and see great strides in alleviating some of the most pressing concerns that Vermont's populations face today. As an early educator and business owner, I'm particularly pleased with many pieces of the bill. The proposed property tax for Vermont family childcare homes and for landlords offering program capacity will be helpful in defraying our costs, and in turn helping both sustainability and helping build program capacity within the early childhood workforce. Proposed changes to the CCFAP program, including increasing the CCFAP rates and basing payments on cost of care rather than market rates, including professional wages, and switching from to the enrollment-based payment system rather than attendance-based, will all help with sustainability and budgeting and further strengthen business practices in the childcare industry. Providing staff retention bonuses, the tiered professional compensation integrated into the CCFAP payment system, and providing additional funding for early childhood scholarships will help remove educational barriers as well as retain and recruit early educators into the workforce. As a mother and a grandmother, I am happy to see the increase in CCFAP eligibility and for the elimination of the work, education, and health eligibility requirements so that CCFAP can truly be based solely on family income. This removes stigma, it improves families' financial stability, and it decreases family stress. Increase in the eligibility to 450% of the poverty level, though, could have an unintended consequence of it creating a cliff for middle-income Vermont families. Increase in the eligibility to at least 600% of the poverty level could eliminate this cliff and truly support the middle-class families. Families should not have to fear that receiving a small raise will negatively impact their family because they fell off an eligibility cliff. As a resident of a rural farming border community, creating the non-citizen child care assistance program for families who are not eligible for CCFAP due to citizenship status ensures that all children have equal opportunities to high-quality early education programs that research has proven can positively change the trajectory of their lives. For these inclusions in S56, I am very grateful and extremely optimistic. My concerns with the current bill are directly related to the UPK changes. Universal Pre-K works in a mixed delivery system. I've utilized a UPK mentor for many years, and I currently offer pre-K under a provisional license granted by my superintendent while I finalize the licensing requirements. Vermont's current mixed delivery system provides families with many opportunities and options as they decide what type of care and education they want for their children. Some families want smaller groups. Some have medically fragile children and prefer continuity of care and community-based program. Some have timid children who, as they're afforded multiple years in the same setting with the same teacher, blossom into leaders of the group. Some have multiple children and need to have them at the same location. The list of considerations is as unique as the families who consider them. Current regulations state that a registered home can only have 6 children under the age of 5. Of those 6, only 2 under the age of 2. If we lose 4-year-olds from our programs, we can't just replace them with babies. Having all 4-year-olds in public schools would have a drastic negative impact on programs like mine. The numbers just don't work and could lead to closures of programs due to not being able to fill slots. It'll create more group turnover and it may just disrupt families. While the current UPK regulations require 10 hours per week of educational requirement, my program already offers full day, full year pre-K program. It's play-based, it's nature-based, and it's developmentally appropriate. And because my program begins at birth and continues through age 12 for after school, individualizing curriculum is natural and it's uninterrupted because I know what they know. I know their interests, I know their learning styles, and I know what they need to know. I can integrate learning goals into multiple domains, multiple times, scaffold attempts, and introduce further supports and experiences, and then celebrate the mastery for each child, all day, all year, for as long as it takes. And because I offer a multi-age setting, no child feels stigma for not keeping up with their peers. And my leaders learn that part of their strength is helping others and accepting that we all do the best we can with the skills we have at any given time. Learning is a continuum. The existing mixed delivery system ensures that families can decide that if this learning continuum and continuity of care is valuable to themselves and for their child. The proposed bill would remove children from existing private pre-K programs and limit families' access to the diversity of these programs. There is a saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and I agree with that statement. But we need to listen to the villagers regarding their children. We don't move the village. Again, I want to express my sincere appreciation for putting a child care bill forward, and thank you for your time today. I ask that you please support the bold innovations of S56 relating to CCFAP. They truly will help Vermont families. And I ask that you consider changes to the bill that will preserve our current mixed delivery system for universal pre-K so that families can have access to a variety of pre-K programs that fit their needs, whether that's in community programs or public schools. Thank you.
Christina, thank you, and congratulations on your professional development. Coming from where you said you started and now in a master's program is significant.
Thank you.
And thank you for your work and thank you for your testimony. We look forward to having you send it in and so we can have it on the record.
I absolutely will.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are stepping away from S56 and we are really honored to have members of our federal delegation representatives here. So who is here? Let's see. Is Catherine Ecker Van Haast here? Outside.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming in. So you know what? I understand that our visitors from the education world were here. We probably should have introduced you, but at some point we might do that.
Yeah, we're really interested in the four-year-old part.
Yes.
For all kids across the state, so we'd love to talk about it.
Yes, we'll do that. And we're developing a plan to focus more on childcare in here.
Oh, I understand that. Totally get that, yeah. And I just want to say, good meeting around, so I think.
Yeah, terrific. Okay.
Good to see you, Senator.
Oh, good.
Hi, how are you? Good, how are you?
Hey, Katie.
Hey, how are you? All right, how are you? Good, nice to see you. Good to see you. Good. How are you? Good.
We are still live.
We are still.
Yeah, we can all three sit.
We're still live. So if the three of you want to sit up together at the end of the table, that would be terrific.
Katie, we're gonna put you in the middle.
Oh, good, I get to,
Yeah,
get
the throne seat. Great.
technically, that doesn't put us in order, but all right.
This is great. So thank you for coming in. I hope this is the first of many other and more in-depth opportunities to talk with each of you. It's great to have you here. So why don't we just do that? Why don't you just introduce yourself for the record, and if you have something to offer, to share with us, that's fine. And then I have a letter that I wrote dated March 24th, 2021 that hasn't been fully edited and sent, but the issues are still contemporary. So you might receive a letter from me now that we have a new congressional delegation, but you will get a letter sooner than later. So please, welcome. Thanks. So let's do this first. Senator Bullock, you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone, Martine Rock-Hewitt. I live in Burlington and represent Chittenden Central.
Good morning, Dave Weeks, represent Rutland County, and I live in Proctor.
Ginny Lyons, representing Chittenden Southeast. Good to see you.
Terry Williams, representing Rutland County from Polk.
Senator Hardy had to step out. She's helping to run the election that's coming up. And you are going to meet with her, I think, this afternoon for committee. So go right ahead, introduce yourself for the record. And
Good morning, everybody. I'm Katie Van Haast. I'm Bernie Sanders' State Director. And I'm Rebecca Ellis. I'm Senator Welch's State Director.
And I'm David Scher, and I am Becca Balance State Director.
we are honored to have you here. Thank you for your work.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So I think I could just start maybe for a couple minutes. We don't think we need to go into too much detail, but we thought it would be helpful just to make sure you all know what our offices do. We obviously have all shared constituents, and there's often opportunities to help each other out on shared issues, but also where we can support you as legislators in our work. So as sort of the state office for Senator Sanders, our role is really to represent the senator out in the community when he's in DC, and also to provide direct constituent services. That's everything from answering the phones to individual assistance to Vermonters on specific issues they're having with the federal government, and getting out to the communities and talking to people. It's really important to Senator Sanders that our office does a significant amount of proactive outreach. So we're not just responding to invitations, but we're actually going out, walking a main street, stopping into a business, just talking to folks at the register, talking to business owners, walking into our community health center and just asking how things are going. Bernie really wants to hear from people who may not necessarily think to pick up the phone and call him. So that's a big part of what we do. But specific to the legislature, two things I would mention briefly. One is that we are happy to help you all as you research legislation where there may be actions happening in other states that we can help connect you with resources. Or if there's, we know how much federal dollars are coming into the legislature in a way that is pretty unprecedented prior to 3 years ago. And if you ever have questions about how that money can be spent or ways that other states are using those funds, we're happy to help facilitate those conversations as well. One of the resources that's at our disposal that we find tremendously helpful is the Congressional Research Service, which is an arm of Congress, works for both the Senate and the House, and they do research for us. And that means they also do research for our constituents and for you as our legislators. So if you ever have a question about federal policy that our staff doesn't know the answer to, we can reach out to the Congressional Research Service and get some answers. The other thing we can do is provide testimony to all of you on issues that you're addressing to understand what the federal perspective is on those pieces of legislation. We're almost never, I wouldn't say never, but almost never going to weigh in on state law because we leave that to all of you. That's your jurisdiction, not ours. But we are happy to provide that federal perspective. And lastly, if you all have constituents who are having issues with the federal government, we're happy to help with those, whether it's Social Security benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, you can name it. Medicaid's sort of more you than us, Social Security, veterans benefits, we're happy to help. And conversely, we sometimes may reach out to you if we hear from a constituent that lives in your district that's having a state issue that's not in our jurisdiction. So we'd love that partnership to be bi-directional. So I'll stop there. Rebecca and David can fill out anything I missed and anything that is specific to the different offices.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, so one thing for you to know is that we naturally go in order of seniority, so because we show up together at a lot of meetings. So it's now Sanders, Welch, Balint as our order. Sometimes we go out of order, but we go in that order. And I don't really have too much to add to what Katie said, except that I did want to underscore that we, as representing our office, we work together quite a bit. We collaborate very well. You can see we show up here together today, and it was a nice coincidence that the delegation introduced its first Vermont delegation bill today to create a study commission for wild and scenic designation for the Nulhagen River and Fall Stream. So just another example of how not only we at the staff level work together well, but our bosses also work together well. And if you contact one of us, we will frequently loop in the other offices, either at the state director level or staff level, depending on what the question is. So that's it for me.
And they have summarized everything.
Actually, Rebecca and Dave, you each need to introduce yourself for the record.
Oh, right. Yes, for the record, I'm Rebecca Ellis, the state director for Senator Welch.
Okay.
And for the record, David Scher, state director for Congressman Becca Balint. So yeah, they did a great job introducing it. We are very much in startup phase still in the Balint office. Things are going well. It's been very busy, but we don't have quite the level of systems perfection that the other two offices have worked out, but they've been very kind at helping us get ourselves up and running. But really, we are also available in all the ways that Katie and Rebecca have described already. We're very happy to be available. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to our office. As they mentioned, we will coordinate on things. Reach out. I'm happy to be the point of contact for legislative issue, or from folks reaching out from the legislature, I should say generally. So please feel free to reach out to me, and we look forward to being a resource and working with you.
That's terrific. You know what would be really helpful? I know that we have your contact information here, but it would be nice to, if you could just send a short email to Alex and with your contact info and how you would like best to be contacted, and we can share it around the committee. So we all know how to ring you up or send you an email, or however it works. No snail mail, please. So there are a significant number of issues that swirl around here in this building in particular. Healthcare is just, and health and welfare cover just a huge amount of ground. And I was fortunate enough to meet with Bernie's childcare person in the summer, which is good. But it would be nice to know who else we can, if there are contacts for each of your offices, if you have that information related to health and welfare, that would be good. As I said, I have a letter that's 3 pages long, and it could be longer, you know, listing some of the concerns that we have, and we'll look at more. I think we might develop a letter as a committee. I'll use that as a draft and start there. But I know I see Deb Richter is here. Primary care is an ongoing, unbelievable concern. Medicaid concern with the 6.2% increase that we had during the pandemic was wonderful, but that is going away. And so one of the top priorities, I think, for us is how can we get a CPI on Medicaid so we can improve payment, in particular to payment equity for our primary care folks. So there are little things like that that mean a great deal, and I know that you all care about those things as well. And then the other one that's risen to the top, and it's been in the news just again on student loans and the benefit that employees had during the pandemic, where employers could say, yes, you can write off from your AGI, can write off your student loan. That's going away. So I put a bill in the other day that says all principal and interest can be deducted from your AGI. We don't know how much that is, but there's the student loan issue, I think, is going to solve a lot of our workforce and business problems across this. I guess that's a health and welfare issue, isn't it? Yeah, especially for healthcare workers. There, I connected it. But so there are little things like that that we're always talking about, and then of course, ERISA is the challenge in our state with such a small population, being unable to have any oversight for the self-insured lives that are here. We'll try to do the best we can to improve the system that we have for, you know, quality health plans and to bring folks in, but it's a little bit, just a little bit, it's a small piece of the population. So we could go right here and listen. I think, you know, Senator Gulick may have a question, Senator Weeks, Senator Williams, comments or questions. We'll give 2 minutes.
Okay.
We'll go.
In 2 minutes, I'm just wondering if you're preparing or how you're preparing for the Medicaid redesignation, because I would imagine there's going to be a lot of communication around that. A lot of folks might be dropped or moved off of Medicaid. Are you all planning for that at all?
So I can speak to that somewhat, and just for everyone's situational awareness, one of the things that happened with the new Congress, in addition to our newly configured congressional delegation, is Senator Sanders changed his chairmanship from the Budget Committee to the Health Committee, which is the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, named by former Senator Jim Jeffords. So it's a nice little Vermont tie-in, former chair of that committee as well. And so we have jurisdiction over a lot of healthcare, though Medicaid and Medicare fall into the Finance Committee. That being said, Senator Sanders has a very good working relationship with Senator Wyden, who chairs that committee, and there's so much overlap that they're in close touch. I would say to the extent that there is a federal solution to Medicaid as pertains to FMAP, as it pertains to the potential for a CPI for Medicaid. That is something that we would be looking at. In terms of how the redeterminations happen and how Vermonters are communicated with, that's really sits with the state and with AHS. We have had conversations with them to understand what the impact is going to be for Vermonters. We also know that that impact doesn't just sit within Medicaid, but has connections to other programs and how people have eligibility and access to those other programs. So in those regards, we are talking to them. One of the things, I'm going to try to keep this really short, is that we're very aware of is an issue with Medicaid, where at the federal level, CMS has made a decision about how the Medicaid funding comes into the state every year based on the prior year's spending. Right. And we want to make sure there's no negative impact, which right now we're seeing this constant reduction that every time we save $1, we lose $1 the following year. And
Vermont is really good at losing the dollar.
Yeah. And, we know that the state's, our global commitment waiver was intent to find ways to save money in traditional Medicaid by making investments further upstream. These are all good things, but if it means less money than following year, it's really sort of illogical. So we're tracking this stuff and we'll do what we can, but would love to hear from you all as to ways where we can play a bigger role and be supportive of the issues that are happening.
Thank you for correcting me, redetermination, not redesignation. I appreciate it.
Oh, I didn't even
no,
notice.
That's helpful. I just would imagine we're going to be hearing from constituents, probably, right?
Right. So that, yes, remember, I sent out, did you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So there is a process and there is a website for DEVA. They have a lot of frequently asked questions and so on. So I can resend that.
One thing just I wanted to add is in terms of contacts, you can always feel free to contact me and I will, depending on what your question is, find the right person on our staff. In terms of healthcare issues, Ina Backus joined our office a few weeks ago. So we're delighted for the state.
We know where she lives.
And so, yeah, she can be a great resource to you as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would say the same. Happy to be the point of connection. We have about 45 people working on our help committee and would not suggest that you know exactly who to call for each of those issues.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. We're happy to connect with you and then you can sort of triage.
Actually, along that line, is it possible, I know the chairman asked you for your contact information, but is it possible to provide an organization chart of each of your organizations so we understand how you're structured, who the folks are that are, potential subject matter experts, or at least who to address? Thank you.
I have no questions, but nice to meet you and contact information will be good. Thank you.
We're good. Thank you. Thank you all for being available. Appreciate it. Give our best to your
We'll
bosses.
send an email, but I'll give some business cards as well.
Yeah. And I know you don't weigh in on state issues, but if you see something that you think is linked in with what you're doing, let us know.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good to meet you.
Best of luck to you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
for your time.
Before we finish, we just got one last visitor from staff. There you are.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. Thank you all.
Just a quick, I think we don't have time for formal testimony, but just to introduce yourself and let us know what your interest is and.
Thanks, like a minute or two, probably. Okay. So I'm Emily Cohen, and I'm here from the Vermont Food Bank. I live in Waterbury, and I've worked at the Vermont Food Bank for the past 5 years on helping people understand where's Vermont versus groceries for food. And today's SNAP Awareness Day, so there's a lot going on here, a lot of testimony. And basically, there's going to be a cut to SNAP coming up that will hit people's wallets in April. So 72,000 people are going to see a reduction in their benefits. And so at the food bank, we're anticipating increased need on our network for more food. So any support to food programs that will help, we can't fill that gap at 6.5 million decrease in federal funding, but any support such as to the $3 million base funding request the Vermont Food Bank has for older adult nutrition programs. NOFA has a request. We're just supporting the Vermont Farm Bill priorities, the coalition priorities would be wonderful.
Thank you. You know what, as we get into the budget cycle, we'll start thinking about all of these types of needs and issues. So it's nice to make connection with you.
Thank you so much for your time and the work you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm a parent too, so hearing that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And we do have.
And you have my full testimony in case.
Yes, that's good. We have it online. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.